nutrients, and fertilizers to meet growing and global demands. Commercial insect agriculture facilities are looking to make a significant investment and contribution to the competitiveness of the agricultural sector. To lead in attracting this new industry, we are seeking to acknowledge the fit of this activity within the broader realm of the agricultural and value-added processing. Testifiers will follow me to provide more details of the potential insect agriculture and answer any questions that you may have. I thank you for your time and attentiveness. I'll welcome an opportunity to answer any questions. It is a pretty simple bill. I think you'll find on page 2, line 5, it talks about insect protection. So if you'll like to ask any questions, that's great. If I could answer them, fine. If not, there's someone behind me, or I'll just sit like a little fly on the wall and wait till I'm called back up. Yes.
Well, just for the record, I have promised Senator Albrecht that I wouldn't bug her about this bill before it came up. Any questions from the committee? Senator Hughes?
I know. How do you not ask a question on this, right? A bug bill. How many insect farmers are there in Nebraska?
I have no idea. We're going to find out, though.
I want to know, like, do you need like a horse to round them up? And
We're going to find out.
okay, I will say that.
Okay.
Any further questions? You don't anticipate this will become an issue for the brand committee?
Unless you want to try to brand them.
All right, you'll stick around for close?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, we'll start with proponents, LB 1207. Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. Be happy to answer your question.
Oh, I can't wait.
Hi, my name is Keith Driver, KEITHDRIVER. I'm from a company called Protix Biosystems. We're based out of the Netherlands. We have a 150,000 square foot insect production facility just south of Rotterdam. And we're looking to build an insect farm facility here in the US Midwest. So Protix was founded in 2009 and a mission to bring forward insect production for animal feed production. Commercial insect production consists of 3 species, primarily in North America. It would be crickets, mealworms, and black soldier flies. And I'll speak a little bit to one of the big mealworm companies that's in Nebraska. We picked the black soldier fly. It grows 1 million times its body weight in 2 weeks, which makes it very efficient at upcycling low-value nutrients into high-value proteins and oils. They don't have mouth parts while they're in their adult phase, and we harvest 99% of them while they're in their larval stage for protein. So only the 1% are allowed to breed, and they don't have mouth parts, which means they're not a vector for disease, and they have no means or reason to escape. They stay contained, so there's no rounding them up. The density for rearing is very high. In a 400,000 square foot building, which is what we're looking at, there'd be 32 billion head under management, which gives new definition to all hat, no cattle. We are literally the largest livestock producers in the world in that regard. Primary markets for the feed ingredients are pet food. 10% of dogs are allergic to traditional feed products, so we fit into that market. We also fit into aquaculture, poultry production, backyard chicken, wild bird, a few other markets like that. But it's a specialty protein, and the lipids are used in hog production as a palliatant, particularly around weaning, and into aquaculture feed as a coating. We have lauric acid in our oil, which makes it differentiates it from other animal lipids, and we have chitin as a protein, which has certain values in particularly species with exoskeletons or the need to synthesize that themselves. We are a good fit with the alternative protein space in that we upcycle waste and byproducts from those industries. Commercial facility, like we're contemplating, is 400,000 square feet, 150 jobs, 800 to 1,000 tons per day of feedstock. So we need large volumes of particularly wet feedstocks. We feed at 75% moisture. So we take things that are otherwise going to water treatment plants, or in the case of what we're looking at in Dakota City, would be paunch from the Tyson plant, and upcycling those into the high value proteins. The investment will be in the range of $130 to $150 million. in land building and equipment. Feedstocks, we take a wide range of facilities, of materials, everything from ice cream waste through to grain materials. The potential for Nebraska, Nebraska had a famous mealworm startup started by 3 women, Jorard Enterprises. They sold to a French company as they planned their expansion. So where you see innovation in agriculture, you find folks working with insects in that regard. Sorry. We're considering siting a facility here in Nebraska, and it won't be a surprise that most regulations didn't contemplate insects when we were thinking about agriculture. We had the same issue historically with aquaculture, where it was contemplated, and so we're asking for inclusion so that our facility, which is all aspects of an animal production facility from the feedlot and the feed production through to processing, can be included within the current definition of agriculture here in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiber. Please don't mistake my interjection of humor as making this not to be a serious subject. It is. We're glad to have you here. Any questions from the committee? Well, Senator Hughes.
So thanks for coming in. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, Dakota City, that's not in Nebraska. I looked it up. It is. I figured it was like in South Dakota. So what is your plans for, like, I mean, we're gonna get this. This helps for advertising stuff for Nebraska. Do you have set plans to build? Like, what's your schedule?
Sure. So Protix announced a partnership with Tyson, who's a large industrial player here. They have a need to upcycle certain materials from their facility. So they've got a plant in Lexington, Nebraska, and one up in Dakota City. Dakota City happens to also have a ingredient facility where they're processing peas, and they get the protein out of the pea, but there's all peas.
Okay.
But they also have all the starch and fiber.
Right.
So we can take the starch and fiber, combine it with the corn and other ingredients that are in the region to make a feed for our product. So we're looking with Tyson, our deal is 1 plant up to 3 in the U.S. Midwest. So we're looking to make a significant investment here.
And the one that, or what you're thinking of building is the black soldier fly one? Or
Black soldier fly farm, yes.
so you pick one insect at the plant. You don't have like all 3 or whatever.
No, ours is the black soldier fly.
And this is just larvae.
So 1% are allowed to pupate and turn into flies.
Right. So you have like a fly room and then a larvae room? I've got to see this place.
Yeah, so 400,000 square feet, we have a lot of rooms for a lot of things, but
Right.
about 1% is the lucky few that we allow to hatch out. They last about 2 weeks, maybe, if you're lucky, as a fly. And because they have no mouth parts, the reason they grow so quickly is they take on fat and protein, and then they pupate, and then they live as long as they can. A female lays 600 to 800 eggs. We incent them to lay their eggs in a honeycomb type structure, and then the circle of life continues, and we go on from there.
It's like you walk in, what does this look like?
It looks more like what I would think an Amazon warehouse looks like.
Yeah.
We start in our facility in Bergen op Zoom, we start 60,000 pallet-sized trays that are about 6 inches deep.
Yeah, okay.
With feed and eggs and
Stack them
larvae.
up. All over.
Stack them up, put them in. If you can imagine bringing 800 tons of feed into a building, we bring a lot of energy in that in. So we have to keep them cool, stack them.
Sure.
So it's an HVAC.
Yeah.
So it's very highly automated. You can't do it one at a time with 32 billion. You got to do them in batches of crates, and it's conveyors and automation and entomology coming together to bring value to those products.
And I'm just gonna ask one more question. The 150 jobs
Yes.
at this one 400,000 facility, are they mostly like just logistics, like moving these trays around and doing like?
So
are they
everything from in the facility we have in Bergen op Zoom, we've got entomologists, we've got programmers, we've got automation engineers, there is some
About
labor.
nutrition people.
We have nutritionists, we have mechanics. It's relatively high paying jobs. We don't do a lot because you're literally dealing with 32 billion at their highest weight. They're 150 to 250 milligrams. So they're quite small.
Sure.
So you have to do it through automation. So it's the level of education that we're looking for fits well with
Okay,
the
and then
future
just
of
one
agriculture.
more question.
Yeah.
So then when they're ready to harvest,
yes.
you like freeze them and then they're freeze dried and send them off to the pet companies, or how does that work?
Great question. So that would be more like in crickets, they would freeze them and send them as
Okay.
frozen, as blocks. We tip the tray, separate the frass, which is the fertilizer component,
Right,
the worm casting.
Take the poo out,
Take the poo,
and
well,
then-
it's got more value than that, but yeah.
okay,
From the larvae, and then we macerate
you smush them.
smush them.
Good, that's
Protect
what I
the
wonder,
dust.
I'm like, do you freeze them or like smash
No,
them
we
up?
smush them and then we
So you
dry
sell,
and
like,
separate
sludge.
yes, we create a meal, a puree, and then we
Puree.
separate the puree into its protein and oil.
No, I mean, this is fascinating, Okay.
It's I've had, New York investment bankers, I've had all sorts of folks come through, and I just love showing them what agriculture works out on the scale. It's fascinating.
Thanks for bringing this. This is
All right, thank you, Senator Hughes. I will never use the word puree again without
Oh, I know,
thanking
right?
Senator Brewer.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. All right, well, Senator Hughes took a couple of my questions, but
She had 23 of them.
yeah, I know. Let's just get back to the basics here. All right, so you have choice between mealworm and crickets, but here in Nebraska, you're going to focus on flies.
Yes,
What's the name of this fly again?
the black soldier fly. It's native to Nebraska.
Okay, and the end product, one of them would be dog food.
So we create a protein powder. I'm not allowed to show you what it looks like, but I have some I can show you afterwards. It looks like any other protein powder that would go into, like the Purina plant would use it. We sell to Mars and all the likes.
So you're thinking my German short hairs are going to switch from blue buffalo to this fly stuff, and this is going to be something they're going to eat?
So it's interesting with pets. So if 10% of cats like something, that's an approved cat food. If 90% of dogs like it, then it's an approved dog food. That's the test because cats are finicker. And we, most companies have a line of alternative proteins. Where we compete is with things like kangaroo meat. So for hypoallergenic pets, or those that you would buy, pet food you would buy at the veterinarian, not at the pet mart. That's the pet food that we go into, the one that's sort of engineered for a dog that might have some digestive issues or otherwise. So even if we were to produce all 60,000 tons of protein that we're at this plant, we're going to be a niche product in those. We're also think of things like reptiles and otherwise that for which this would be a very natural feed. So we focus on dogs because it's easy for people to understand the quantity and the scale. Purina plant is a big plant, but we focus on the range of specialty and conventional pets.
Well, and most people don't keep Gila monsters or anything that might be really excited about eating what you have there too.
So in backyard chickens, you go to Baumgart's in town here, you'll find black soldier flies and mealworms on the shelf as a backyard chicken treat. It's already for sale here. I should say I lived in Fort Dodge, which is 4 hours away, and they had it there, so I'm assuming they'll have it here. So it is an ingredient, but it is not conventional or commoditized. It's still a specialty ingredient.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Senator Rapey.
Thank you, Chairman. My first question was why Nebraska, but I think you've answered that. We seem to be, maybe our new mascot's going to be the black silver fly. It's
True.
unique to Nebraska or just a good number.
So when I had the chance to meet the chairman of the committee this morning, I don't know if you noticed, but we were standing in the rotunda, and underneath our feet was actually there's a butterfly and another insect which I couldn't name in the floor. So yes, we're already here. Insects are already included in the architecture of the building. Why we picked Nebraska specifically? The U.S. Midwest is one of 5 regions of the world that's a net exporter of food. And so if we're looking for food and feed byproducts, this is where you come to get at the earliest stages of agriculture before that food becomes harder and more processed further through the line. So, biofuel production, grain milling, peat processing, all of that occurs here. And this is where those primary streams are available for us.
My second question was why now? Was it some research that evolved into this product or?
Yeah, so the domestication of the species started about 15 years ago. Luckily, our cycles are a month long, so we can do what would take conventional ruminant agriculture, tens of years to cycle. We can do in a year from a genetics perspective. But the pressure on proteins has continued. So since the 80s, there hasn't been much more fish meal produced. We've just moved into now we have soybean meal and we have all these other alternative proteins that are trying to fill the protein gap. And this is one on the feed ingredient side that allows us to take undervalued products and upcycle them. But it is at the edges of conventional protein production, although it relies on a lot of the same technology.
It's very helpful in me understanding why, when I was a kid on the farm, my dog used to jump into the air to try to get flies.
Exactly.
So he knew more than I did.
If you think about fly fishing, it's the same process.
What is your greatest business risk that you face?
So the greatest business risk we face from a production point of view, we don't have diseases like avian flu, touch wood, that would affect us as an industry because our animals grow in the wild, would grow in manures. So they're used to highly biological material. It comes down to the prevalence of feedstock. So we become very reliant on our feedstock providers. And much like a dairy even would be, if there's a change in diet that impacts the milk production, we're the same way, except our cycles are 6 days long. So we don't have that luxury. Like the commercial feed part of the feedlot part of our operation is 6 days long. So we can't be, if the feed's better or worse and it shifts us by a day, it can really throw off the production cycle of a facility that large. And then the next one is reliability of utilities, because we produce enough heat in the building that they would, if we lose power for extended periods of time, we have to take them off feed. And that, of course, then trickles through our production cycle as well. So those are two sides.
You got to keep up with Senator Hughes, so go ahead.
I'm a long way from 23. I guess my question is there any concerns with the community that you've placed your facility in? Is that a non-issue? We see it with livestock, if you will, but I don't think people probably thought about flies.
No, we're going into industrial zoned facilities and areas. And we are inviting local stakeholders to see and feel what a facility would look like. We had the mayor of a city come visit us and we had them count the number of flies they saw in the building and they saw 4. So in a facility that had 8 billion. So it's a pretty good ratio. You might see more cows on the streets in Omaha than you would see flies in the building in our facility. And then we manage for odors as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for being here. Very
Pleasure.
informative.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Reedy. Senator Hughes.
This is my last one. So is there like an ethical way that you get to smush these things? Like, does PETA get involved or anything like that?
So it's actually a very topical discussion.
Well, other things you have to like put in. I mean, you have to ethically kill.
Yeah, we have an
Right?
obligation to do that. Our ingredients are FDA reviewed, so we do have some oversight from that. And as an industry association, the North American Coalition for Insect Agriculture is currently working through standards for euthanasia. They don't have a stress response that we understand yet. And so we're working with various stakeholders, the usual suspects, to come up with mechanisms. Tyson, as a partner in this, they have experts on animal cruelty and animal welfare, and we're working with them to ensure that the facility will meet the sort of highest standards. We are a mission-oriented organization, and so it's part of our DNA to consider that as how
Do
we
you have
do
like
it.
a video of like how this works? Or
I would love to, and I will forward
I
a
so
video
wanna
and a
see this
presentation
thing.
with some pictures of what it looks like.
Cool.
If the chairman would be comfortable, I'd like to leave you with some samples for your office, for all
I
the
want
tourists
to
to
see
visit.
Senator Howland.
Yeah, no,
With spoons and napkins.
absolutely for all.
Senator Hanson.
Thank you. I hate flies.
Okay.
But I think I like this bill.
Okay.
How, I think I got a couple questions. Are there other industries this bill might affect that deal like in production such as what you're doing? And like in like other places maybe where this has been incorporated, other states?
So the the number one industry that we impact in this way would be the pet food space in terms of the ingredients and the opportunities for them to include this in what their product mix as they go forward. So as they look towards sort of a vegetarian pet food, this is one of the ways you can get in that regard, move in that regard.
Or are there other companies that, I don't know what you call it, grow insects? Or what we're trying to expand with this bill? Are there other industries, like for instance, maybe one time you talked about there are some industries that deal with like worms or like that?
Sure, absolutely.
Fertilizer, like would this affect them as well? Like expand some of their abilities to do certain things?
It will. So the color red comes from carmanic acid, which comes from the gut of the cochineal insect. So there are other industries that are looking at using it for producing biopesticides, biofertilizers, that are looking to use that. EASF has a facility in just outside of Cedar Rapids. No, not Cedar Rapids. I think it's Des Moines, Iowa. They have a facility there that they grow insects for various isolates that they use. And so their insects are very efficient at growing. And therefore, if you're going to take extracts like carmanic acid, like the color red from the only natural red color, then you can get it from that, from insects, and you can breed them and stress them to get that response, improve the capacity of that. So there are others. It's going to be very high nutraceutical, pharmaceutical applications, but yes, there's a number of applications like that.
That's good about that. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any additional questions? This may be getting it too deep in the woods and maybe proprietary information, but you had mentioned earlier about you at some stage you had sent them to lay eggs.
Yes.
Do you play provocative music or something, or what's
So you're not far off. So you have to play with. No, as someone who's been in an insect cage with a wavelength meter to get the wavelengths just right to incent the right, I can tell you that there is absolutely a wavelength of light that produces the best quantity and quality of eggs. It's humidity, it's temperature, and wavelength. We haven't tried music yet. I'll take that under advisement, but it's very important to do that. The happiest and healthiest larvae will become the female or have the highest chance of becoming the female, and therefore lay the best eggs, and that provides the product. So we spend a lot of time ensuring that lucky 1% is incented to be the highest producing progeny.
All right, any other questions from the committee? I know you hear all the fly jokes, I get that, you've heard this one, but you are officially now the Lord of the Flies.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. It's
Thank you,
very
Roger.
interesting. Additional proponents for LB 1207? Are there opponents for LB 1207? Anyone in the neutral capacity, LB 1207? Seeing none, Senator Albrecht, fly right on in here.
Wow, that was quite an education. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about flies. I have a little bit more respect for them now on the farm, even though they're not using those. I wish they would. But we probably wouldn't be able to use it for a product after it's been where it's been. But I appreciate all the attentiveness, and that was an education like no other. So I just simply ask that you send it out and get it to the floor as quick as we can. Maybe I can get it as a Senate or maybe a Speaker Arch put on his little list of priorities. If everybody likes flies and likes what they're going to do for the animals and the environment, it's pretty cool.
Okay, any closing questions from the committee? All right. Thank you so much, Senator Albrecht.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For LB 1207, for online comments, there was 1 proponent, 0 opponents, and 0 neutral. That officially ends LB 1207. Moving on to LB 1368. Senator Ibach.
We're interesting to see how you follow that.
Yeah.
Mine is not near that.
Sorry,
exciting.
Teresa.
I don't hear that many questions, but
Welcome, Senator Ibach.
thank you very much. Sprinting from judiciary to appropriations to agriculture.
Let me transition.
Yes. Ready?
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Halloran and members of the Ag Committee. My name is Senator Teresa Ibach, spelled Teresaibach, representing District 44. I'm here today before you to introduce my bill, LB 1368, which adopts the Nitrogen Reduction Incentive Act. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the co-sponsors of this bill, Senator Elliott Bostar, Senator Conrad, Senator Dorn, Senator Halloran, Senator Hardin, Senator Holdcroft, Senator Jacobson, Senator Kauth, Senator Meyer, Senator Murman, and Senator Sanders. And I'd also like to thank those supporting 1368, the Ag Leaders Working Group, which consists of Nebraska Cattlemen, Nebraska Corn Growers Association, Nebraska Farm Bureau, Nebraska Pork Producers, Nebraska Sorghum, Nebraska Soybean Association, Nebraska State Dairy Association, Nebraska Wheat Growers and Renewable Fuels, along with the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Nebraska Natural Resources Association, the Exarban Foundation's Full Value Ag folks, and the League of Women Voters. Great support for this. Governor Pillen often says agriculture is the heartbeat of Nebraska, and I couldn't agree more. LB 1368 encourages farmers to adopt efficient and sustainable practices to help Nebraska protect its natural resources. It also positions our farmers to compete globally. It is designed to position Nebraska to win the race to adopt new, innovative farming practices, including the proper use of biological nitrogen products. Here's what the bill does as drafted. The Nebraska Department of Natural Resources, in partnership with the Natural Resources Districts, our NRDs, will develop an incentive program. The program will incentivize farmers to reduce the use of commercial synthetic fertilizers and incorporate innovative new technologies. The program will provide an annual per acre incentive for farmers who, 1, verify commercial fertilizer rates were replaced by the lesser of either 15% or 25 pounds per acre of nitrogen, 2, use a qualifying product in their nutrient plans, and 3, show a historic baseline of fertilizer use to demonstrate nitrogen has been reduced. All of these markers must be qualified through documentation of rates, products used, and history of reductions. In consultation with farmers and industry leaders, a per acre payment rate tied to the commercial rate reduction, one that is not less than $10 per acre, will be established by the Department of Natural Resources. The department will also be charged with reviewing the rates based on inflation or emerging technology in renewing years. We are asking the Department of Natural Resources to assist in identifying geographical beneficial target areas while keeping the program open to all farmers across the state. LB 1368 is currently drafted to request $5 million in general funds to carry out this incentive program. I am open to working with stakeholders and the committee to find additional funding opportunities. I would also like to note that the bill includes a sunset of December 31st, 2029. LB 1368 isn't just about protecting and enhancing our natural resources, which is paramount. It is also about retention to ensure our good life remains for the next generation. As I reached out to leaders in agriculture about the concepts of this bill, I became overwhelmingly impressed by all that is happening in sustainable agriculture. You will hear more about this subject from those who follow me, and I want to take this opportunity to thank those who have shown up today to support this bill. I also know that to win, we need to act urgently, which is why I asked that as a committee, we consider making LB 1368 a committee priority bill. This message that this bill sends is important as the actual details of this bill itself. This is the start of an even bigger and more exciting discussion in the months ahead. I'd just like to point out a couple of the key points. This is not a long-term incentive. This is a short-term model that will help Nebraska be a leader in sustainable ag initiatives. It is why I've included a sunset date on the bill. If we can be first and fast, we don't need the incentive long-term as farmers see the benefits to their bottom line, their land and our water. Second of all, $5 million per year is a start, but frankly, based on conversations that I've had this week, it should be more. I recognize it is an off-budget year, and I visit with Senator Clements, but timing is everything. I want to work with this committee and with the governor on how to best fund this important initiative. We have suggested dollars be used from water sustainability funds, the Resilient Soils and Water Quality Act Fund, the Cash Reserve, Corn Checkoff, and the Environmental Trust Fund, or a combination of all those. As I mentioned, I'm open to options, but would stress again that we want to move quickly. This is an investment in agriculture and in Nebraska's future. I believe LB 1368 can have a profound impact on not only the quality of our land and the water in Nebraska, but also on its value. Incentivizing the adoption of new sustainable technologies is key to getting ahead of impeding threats to production practices and allowing our farmers to lead the way. By working together and being proactive, our farmers can be in the driver's seat on this important issue. Thank you for your time and consideration of LB 1368.
Thank you, Senator Ibach. Questions, Senator Hughes?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for bringing this, Senator Ibach. I almost said Teresa. Senator Ibach. So when you distribute the funds, it's going to be through the NRDs. Is there going to be, I mean, because you and I have talked about this before. There's kind of two issues, right? We've already got the nitrates that are down there, and then we've got the issue of what's heading down there by what's being put on the fields now. Will there be a focus on areas that have the higher nitrate, nitrate levels? Like, will they be first up for the grant programs, or like how, I guess how, or maybe you haven't even gotten there. How will the funds be distributed?
They could be, and that's up to the Department of Natural Resources
So
to
the
decide.
Nebraska, they'll kind of sell.
My goal really is to leave it open to all farmers because right now, clear across the state, farmers are starting to use biologics and they're proven. And there's no way to take, I mean, the nitrates that are in our groundwater supply now have taken 30, 40,
I know,
50
to get
years
there.
to get there.
Yep.
And so this isn't an easy fix. This really came out of a planning committee meeting we had this summer. Senator DeBoer is the chair, and she said one of the planning committee meetings we want to dedicate to water, specifically nitrates. And so as a result of that planning committee meeting, we talked about how we are reactive. How do we test nitrates in the soil? How do we test nitrates in our water supply? What if they test positive? My approach and my kind of a brainchild out of that discussion is how do we be proactive and not put synthetic nitrates in the ground to start with? So this really is an attempt at being proactive, giving our farmers and ranchers an opportunity to say, we're the best stewards of our land, and this is how we can be proactive and be ahead of the curve when it comes to increasing our yields and telling our story instead of someone else's.
And NRDs already do some of these preventative things with, there's incentives for cover crops and things like that. So this is just another tool, I guess, for NRDs.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Additional questions, Senator Reed?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. As a healthcare interested person, I am concerned about the level of nitrates, and particularly for our citizens with children as well. I know it's been a problem. My question is has this been aggravated because in the past we used to use crop rotation, but I think now we substitute crop rotation with greater fertilization to get greater crops, corn crops primarily. Are we looking at any other application techniques or in farming pieces rather than just saying, no, we've got to get every piece of land into corn production it possibly can.
I think crop rotation is still a very important part of it. We rotate crops on our operation. I also think that cover crops or how we identify ways to enhance our soil health is a big piece of it. And biologics are a big piece of that, because when you can create a better soil, it creates a better crop, which results in higher yields. And I think if you look at the research over the last few years, we've identified a lot of value in soil health. And so what some of these products will do is reduce the amount of synthetic nitrogen that you have to apply, and it increases your soil health by substituting in these biologics, which, I mean, I could go into a whole dissertation, but you know, when you look at biologics and how they work with the root systems, with the soil health, I mean, what we're doing is being good stewards and saying soil health is the start, and yields are the beneficiary of it.
Is there any part of this bill dealing with education, which is over to farmers and people that are making the application to build stores and have enough to cover it, but not extra?
That's a really good question. I know companies that supply the biologic products do a great job educating and trying to educate farmers on the benefits. I can't really speak to like an overlying program that's out there. The Department of Ag might have something, or Natural Resources would probably have something. NRDs probably have something locally.
I know farming's become very sophisticated. John, 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Repeat. Further questions? Seeing none, let's stick around for close.
For sure. Thank you.
All right, we're looking for proponents of LD 1368. Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Halloran. And my name is Hank Robinson, HANK-ROBINSON. And I'm here to testify in support of LB 1368 and to thank Senator Ibach for bringing this bill forward and this proposal forward in support of producers in the state of Nebraska. I'm here on behalf of the Exarban Foundation's Full Value Ag Initiative, which was started by business and ag leaders in the state of Nebraska to connect Nebraska's sustainably produced commodities to a growing global market demand for agricultural products that are more sustainably produced. One of the reasons why we're supporting this bill is that while sustainability can mean many things in terms of, and as far as the commercial markets are concerned, it comes down usually to three things: carbon intensity, nitrogen management, and water management. One of the good things about this bill is that with nearly 10 million acres of corn under cultivation, 1.8 billion bushels last year, anything that farmers and growers can do that can reduce their reliance on artificial fertilizer also reduces the carbon intensity of that corn and increases the inventories by which they would be able to leverage price support in their negotiations with the ethanol industry and along with other processors of those goods. So there's three main reasons why we're here in support, why I'm here in support of the bill. And that's because the benefits flow down to many different people. First one is we have a number of companies in the state of Nebraska and agribusiness that have many ways in which they're helping farmers not only manage but reduce their use of chemical fertilizers through biologics, but also through scheduled applications. And so this bill is good for them. It gives some of those growers who have been sitting on the fence a reason to start establishing a relationship with these companies that we know are going to be the future of agribusiness. The other part goes back to the more broadly these practices are adopted and the lower we drive the carbon intensity scores of our inventory of corn in particular in the state of Nebraska, the sooner our elevators, our co-ops, and our farmers are going to be able to leverage the size of those inventories into productive market negotiations. And finally, we recognize the sunset and are completely fine with that. We believe that eventually market support will encourage farmers to not only implement these practices, but to maintain them over time and gain even greater reductions in the use of fertilizer. But the good thing about the bill is that it mitigates some of the risk all producers face anytime they shift to new practices. Finally, not only do we think LB 1368 is a good idea, we think it's a great idea, and we would be open to working with anybody to see if we could extend its reach beyond the 500,000 acres that are currently envisioned in the bill. And with that, I want to thank the committee for having me this afternoon. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Questions? Senator Holcroft?
Thank you, Chairman Howe. Senator Ibach, she mentioned synthetic nitrates versus biologics. Is that right? Can you give me some examples of each of those so I have an idea of what we're really talking about, the differences?
So the two specific differences that you have there are, if we have synthetic, we're talking about anhydrous ammonia, which everyone's familiar with. Approximately 40% of the production of anhydrous ammonia accounts for the full carbon profile of corn. So it's a big drag against the carbon intensity scores for our Nebraska producers. By contrast, the biologics are microbes that are naturally occurring in the soil already, that have been selectively bred and cultivated so that they can be applied at the time seed is. And as a result of those applications, the microbe fixes to the corn root. It feeds off of the sugar that feeds through the corn root on the corn plant. And in exchange, it fixes nitrogen directly from the atmosphere. So it reduces the need of applying synthetic fertilizer, because much like soybean plants, is basically drawing nitrogen directly out of the air.
So microbes is what you?
Yep.
How do you apply those? I mean, is it sprayed? Is it, how do you apply the microbes?
There's a number of different delivery mechanisms available in the market with biologics and with those in particular. Probably the one that Nebraska farmers would be most familiar with would be one where as they're getting ready to sow their seed, it's applied as a seed coating. And so it just goes into the ground with the seed corn itself, and is there as the plant starts to grow up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Holcroft. Additional questions? Senator Hughes?
Thank you, Chair. So I just looked up the makeup of an insect, and it's 10% nitrogen. Can we just use the smush from, I'm just kidding. Okay. So you said you wished even beyond the 500,000 acres. What other options, like what other things do you see that would be very beneficial just in this realm of trying to get off the synthetic nitrogen, things like that?
Well, really what I'm talking about is the reach. I mean, 500,000 acres out of 10 million acres is a good start, but it's not a lot. And so if there would be a way to structure the incentive program, maybe it's something other than a direct cash payment, but some other way that would financially benefit or reduce input costs.
So, but from what I heard, Senator Ibach mentioned this too. When farmers do, because this isn't a prop up, right? It's just to kind of try to turn the tide so they start doing this and then carry it on their own, because we don't want to incentivize forever. So there must be a cost benefit at some point, yes? So how do you, because we don't want to have to do all the acres, I guess what's the best way, I wonder, to get farmers to kind of get that ball rolling? Because I think it's just like everything else. Good practices happen, and then some jump on board, and then everybody else sees it, and then they all start doing it, and then it happens. But you don't even think starting with the 500,000 acres is enough to get that rolling, or?
We just want more bushels of corn to be able to be certified as low nitrogen, low carbon intensity, because that's the number one barrier standing between our producers being able to negotiate real price supports in their sales contracts, is you have thousands of independent operators that are selling into a consolidated market. And those consolidated markets, I think, are open and sensitive to inventories that are lower carbon and lower nitrogen management, like we're
So it's
talking
easier
about.
to sell our goods if
Yep.
we can say,
But in order to do that, you have to have an inventory that's big enough.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about the 500,000 acres, more directly what I'm talking about is, can we get a couple 100 million bushels of corn that reflect these reduced nitrogen management procedures?
do you have suggestions beyond the price per helping them out money-wise? Like,
You know, property taxes come directly out of farmers' pockets. I mean, it's not the same as getting a cash payment, but, you know, they have to pay property taxes with cash. If there would be a way to incentivize this on the back end by, they meet all the requirements that Senator Ibach has in her bill, but then they could get some sort of rebate on the property taxes, there might be a way to stretch that funding across more bushels of corn.
okay, thank you.
Additional questions from the committee? You piqued my interest when you said something about property taxes. Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Additional proponents, LB 1368. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Chairperson Holleran and member of the Agriculture Committee. My name is Claudia Stevenson, CLAUDIA STEVENSON. I'm the Natural Resources and Energy Director of the League of Women Voters of Nebraska. I'm testifying today in support of LB 1368. I want to thank Senator Ibach for bringing this legislation forward. Access to clean drinking water is becoming a huge problem in Nebraska. Too many of our small and rural communities have drinking water contaminated with nitrates. Nebraska has the highest rate of pediatric cancer in the Midwest and ranks number 8 in the nation. Why so high? Researchers point to nitrates in drinking water as one of the possible links to cancer. That's why I support LB 1368, adopt the Nitrogen Reduction Incentive Act. Nebraska has the 3rd highest nitrate levels in the United States. Why? Because too much fertilizer is applied and not used by the intended crop or Gulf grain. Any fertilizer not used by the crop remains in the soil as nitrate, but is easily leached out into waterways and groundwater. So how do we reduce fertilizer use and still maintain productivity? I was a conservationist for the Natural Resources Conservation Service for 34 years. I worked with farmers to create nutrient management plans, monitor and ultimately reduce their nitrogen inputs. Initially, there was apprehension on the farmers' part, but in the end of the season, we showed positive results. In 100% of my contracts, the farmers spent less on nitrogen fertilizer over a 5-year period and maintained production levels. Reducing the nitrogen inputs was a win-win, a win for the farmer with a reduction in production costs, an increase in overall organic matter, and increased water retention capability. The other win was for the environment. Less nitrogen was wasted and so less infiltrated the sources of our community's drinking water. Less nitrates in drinking water means healthier children and communities. LB 1368 is a fantastic addition to LB 243, which created the Soil Health Task Force. Currently, the bill proposes a biennial review of fertilizer rates. I strongly believe it should be an annual review of the soil test and crop rotation. I also suggest that golf courses should be included in the program to review their fertilizer inputs. I also gave you a copy of my most recent well test at our rural house in Ogallala, Nebraska. This shows 10.7 parts per million nitrate. We have to use a reverse osmosis system for our drinking water. For these reasons, we ask you to advance LB 1368 to the floor for debate. Thank you to the committee for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, appreciate it. Thank you. Additional proponents, LB 1368. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Katie Torpy, K-A-T-I-E-T-O-R-P-Y, here today representing the Nature Conservancy and our 5,400 member households. We are in support of LB 1368. The Nature Conservancy supports and implements market-based solutions to stimulate conservation activities on private working lands. In Nebraska, we help to de-risk practices on lands both in row crop agriculture and grazing production, co-creating solutions with landowners, NRDs, and commodity groups. Through our programs, we help cost share practices which provide benefits for soil health, water quality, grassland condition, and carbon sequestration. Across the state, nitrate concentrations are found in excess of EPA drinking water standards in over a third of groundwater wells. Freshwater ecosystems in the eastern third of the state experience seasonal toxic algae blooms that shut down beaches and kill freshwater species. And we know that the primary source of this pollution is agricultural. Here, many farmers apply fertilizer at a rate needed to achieve the maximum potential yield, as recommended by their agronomist, or using coarse nitrogen calculation tool estimates. This typically results in application of fertilizer beyond crop needs, with excess fertilizer running off into our freshwater systems. LB 1368 would help mitigate this risk by shifting toward more precise nutrient management practices through offering per acre compensation tied to reduced application. Many farmers are transitioning away from pure yield optimization and require technical and financial assistance. Because current practices are deeply ingrained in Nebraska farmer culture, such assistance is critical in mitigating the risk associated with this operational change. We need these opportunities such as LB 1368 to support private landowners and help them be good stewards. Abating freshwater nitrogen pollution improves the well-being of human and non-human life alike. Nebraska, like other Midwest states, drains into the Mississippi River basin, contributing also to nutrient pollution-driven hypoxic zone, the nutrient pollution-driven hypoxic zone in the Gulf of Mexico, which is to say that solutions implemented here are a critical piece in addressing this larger whole systems issue, which with implications for seafood production in the United States as well. We applaud this bipartisan effort to address a pernicious public health concern with no easy solutions, and respectfully ask for support of this bill. And I will take a moment to, for an aside. If looking towards the Nebraska Environmental Trust for funding, we would ask that that it's supplementary funds that are sought there, not the source funds for this. It's important to respect that grant process and not cut in line ahead of other worthy projects. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Next proponent, LB 1368.
Afternoon, Senator Holler, members of the committee. My name is Al Davis, A-L-D-A-V-I-S, and I am the registered lobbyist for the Nebraska chapter of the Sierra Club and the 3,000 members of that organization and the Independent Cattlemen of Nebraska. We want to thank Senator Ibach for bringing LB 1368, which incentivizes farm families to manage their fertilizer application and reduce nitrate contamination of the aquifer, which we all depend on for our drinking water. Nitrate contamination of the water table has been building for decades, but it is only recently that people are starting to learn that what once was considered nearly harmless for an adult and only a minor problem for babies with blue baby syndrome may not be true, and that there are apparent connections between nitrates and pediatric cancer, which amplifies the danger associated with nitrates and insulin. Farm states like Nebraska use a massive amount of fertilizer to produce bumper crops of corn, soybeans, and other crops, which we have learned. While we have learned much about fertilizer application and the ramifications of improperly applied fertilizer or too much fertilizer on the state's most precious resource, the ample supply of water which underlies much of the state. LB 1368 is a great first step in trying to actually manage the problem of nitrate contamination and lead farmers to better stewardship of the land through educational and financial incentives. As such, we view the bill as a kind of pilot project to see how reduced application of fertilizer, more dependence on already existing nitrate in the groundwater, and financial incentives can play a part in reducing nitrate contamination. The question is, will the incentives produce concrete results? One would assume the goal here is not to incentivize the entire state's farm economy via the program, but to produce concrete results which reduce nitrate contamination, yet leave yield nearly intact. Our NRDs are the perfect entities to administer a program of this type in cooperation with Extension. And although it would make sense to target the areas with the highest level of contamination, the program should be implemented on multiple different sites to determine if Senator Ibach's incentive produces greater reductions in certain types of soil or different degrees of water hardness, etc. A scientific approach should be implemented so that success can be rapidly adapted to other farms. We urge the agricultural committee to prioritize the bill and move it forward to the floor. I hope you will do that, and Senator Ibach will have some success. And I wanted to second what Ms. Torpy said about the environmental trust funds, which are an important tool for the environmental community. And so, as she said, we would hate to see somebody step ahead of other folks' organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davies, for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next proponent, LB 1368. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Chairman Holler and members of that committee, my name is Lyndon Vogt, Lyndon Vogt. I'm the general manager of the Central Platte Natural Resource District located in Grand Island, Nebraska. I'm testifying today in support of LB 1368 from the Nebraska Association of Natural Resource Districts as well. Nebraska has more irrigated acres than any other state in the nation. Irrigation allows us to have a very stable crop yield on nearly 9 million acres. Applying extra fertilizer and water has been considered cheap insurance to guard against yield loss. The downside of that thought process is increasing nitrate levels in the soil and waters of the state. Many NRDs have worked with UNL and other professionals to educate producers on proper timing, placement, and amounts of nitrogen applied to improve yields and profitability while also reducing the risk of contamination. Central Platte NRD, in conjunction with UNL, has the longest on-farm research project addressing nitrogen rates in the nation. This relationship has lasted over 44 years and is still growing strong. And actually, we still have the same employee running that program that started that program 44 years ago with us in conjunction with UNL. The NRDs need assistance in getting the majority of producers to adopt new practices and products while lowering their actual nitrogen applied. There are two options when implementing change: incentives and regulations. In my opinion, regulations are much more expensive than incentives, and once implemented, regulations seldom go away. Financial incentives will be imperative to getting producers to change their current practices and help protect their water quality. There are biological products that can assist in reducing nitrate rates as long as the producers are using it correctly and the amount of nitrogen applied is reduced by the suggested amount. We know they work to help reduce nitrogen rates applied. There's also a sensor-based imagery via satellite that's become available in the last few years that recognizes when the crop is lacking nitrogen, so the crop can be spoon-fed during the growing season. This reduces over-application and leaching of nitrogen as well. The Central Platte began cost sharing on sensor-based technology for nutrient applications last year. The majority of producers participating in this program are more profitable per acre as a result of reduced nitrogen application and stable yields. On average, profitability has increased over $27 per acre, and nitrogen applied has decreased over 40 pounds per acre. In some cases, nitrogen applications have decreased over 90 pounds per acre with no yield loss. This technology replaces an algorithm that results in a different amount of recommended nitrogen by every entity selling nitrogen and making recommendations to our producers. Central Platte has required crop reports in our high nitrate areas since 1987. These reports include soil and water samples to account for all nitrogen sources available, and all results are fed into a UNL algorithm and to show producers what the UNL recommended amount of nitrogen is to produce the desired yield of their crop. If a producer is profitable, it is very difficult to convince them that they can be more profitable by making small changes, even though on-farm research shows that most producers over applied nitrate. It's time for the state of Nebraska to recognize the high nitrate issues we face in the heavily irrigated areas of the state and begin to assist the NRDs and producers in addressing this issue with the latest technologies and financial assistance to implement these programs. If this bill moves forward, the NRDs will work diligently with the Department of Natural Resources in creating new incentive-based nitrogen management programs with a focus on the higher nitrate areas in the state. I would add that the bill has a minimum of $10 per payment, or $10 an acre payment. I do think that needs to be considered. Maybe there needs to be a percentage instead of a hard dollar amount, because there is a tremendous variation in cost between products and programs that are out there. We know that sensor-based nitrogen management and biologicals can work together. We have producers that are using both right now. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Yes, Senator Hughes.
Just one. And I don't know if you know the answer. I could save it for the end. Do you know how much per acre cost the difference is between applying a biologics versus traditional anhydrous? Because we're incenting it at $10 an acre.
I do not.
Okay, maybe somebody coming up will show them. Okay, we're good. We'll get it
Thank you.
later. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. No further questions. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Additional proponents, LB 1368. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Halloran, members of the Agricultural Committee. My name is Ken Winston, K-E-N, W-I-N-S-T-O-N, and I'm appearing as an individual, although I lobby for some organizations. I'm not being paid to appear here this afternoon. So I'm appearing in support of LB 1368 because I've spent many years working on issues related to nitrates and nitrate contamination of groundwater. More than 40 years ago, I got a job as a legislative staffer here, and one of the first things I worked on was nitrate contamination of groundwater. And at that time, there was still debate about what was the cause of nitrate contamination. But there was a scientist at UNL named Roy Spalding who had done some work in this area, and he isolated the isotopes that that showed that there was a direct connection between nitrogen fertilizer and nitrate contamination. And of course, there's also nitrate contamination from improper siting of feedlots or improper lining of lagoons or what have you. So there's a number of different potential sources. And then, of course, as has been mentioned earlier, one of the reasons we're concerned about this is because of the health impacts. And at that time, the primary health impact that they talked about was blue baby syndrome, because of the fact that the excess nitrates in groundwater cause the blood to not be able to transport oxygen to the brain or throughout the body. So it results in the child looking blue, and it has detrimental health impacts on the child. So over the years, I've continued to follow issues related to nitrates and have a lot of personal and professional interest in the issue. And as the bill states, water is one of our most precious resources. I think it actually states it is our most precious resource. So, and well, I suppose we could say our people are our most precious resource, but in terms of natural resources, our water is definitely one of our most precious resources. And the fact that we have such abundant groundwater is really something that it's a source of pride for the people of the state, and it's the envy of many other states, because we have water and lots of other states don't. And so it's really important that we protect the quality of that water. But contamination of groundwater continues to be a major problem. I mean, hopefully, 40 years ago when I was looking at it, we were hoping that we would be able to figure out solutions to it. And at that time, I think one of the tools was providing some tools for our NRDs to address it, and they worked on it. And I think it's important. There's important work that's being done there. But I think there's more that needs to be done in that area. And particularly the fact that there's been connections between pediatric cancer and nitrates. I think that's something that provides us with more reasons for urgency in addressing this. However, although I believe that LB 1368 represents an important step by providing incentives for reducing the use of nitrogen, I would also like to make some recommendations. The first one would be to make sure that we vet the kinds of technologies that we use. I'm certainly a supporter of innovation in technology, but we need to make sure that it's not doing something that's going to cause more harm. And I guess the situation with Aldan and making ethanol with treated seeds, that's an example of something that wasn't properly vetted. Make sure that there's providing additional incentives for people who are stopping the use of nitrogen, of commercial nitrogen fertilizer entirely. I'm sorry, I'm stammering because I'm trying to talk fast. I've got a couple more sentences. And then finally, supporting educational efforts to help farmers and ranchers learn about the financial benefits of reducing chemical inputs. And then finally, I'd just like to ask that LB 1368 be advanced for consideration by the entire legislature. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Winston. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional proponents of LB 1368? Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is John Hansen, John Hansen, Hansen. I appear before you today as the president and the lobbyist for Nebraska Farmers Union. We have been highlighting the problems with excess nitrogen application and growing nitrate levels in the water for decades. And it has been a longstanding pernicious problem, and it's so we are in support of anything that appears to be a step in the right direction. And my work previously as a part of the Lower Elkhorn NRD for 14 years, starting in 1974, was to take an honest look at why is it that we have these hotspots? Where are they coming from? Why are they there? And so all of the drivers that were there then are still there now. And that's the real frustration on our part, is that we're still putting too much nitrogen on in sandy soils that are close to the, that have high water levels. We're still doing a lot of the same stuff. And so we're still over applying fertilizer. I'm a recovering fertilizer dealer. We do all these soil samples, we do all this stuff, and then we had a good third to a half of our customers would over apply the nitrogen based on the soil samples. And you keep telling them you don't need to put that much on, you're not getting the most bang for your buck, all that stuff, yet we continue to do it. And so we look at this as a pilot project. And so based on how it is that you modify agricultural behavior is you educate and you incent. That's how you get conservation on the land. So this is an incentive. We have a lot of other programs right now. We have unprecedented amount of additional programs coming in from the federal level in conservation programs. So this is a good time to sort of augment those, piggyback on some of those. But agriculture, it seems to continue to respond to the higher speed of the economic treadmill that we're on. And so we continue to swing for the fences. We continue to go for maximum yields, a lot of cases, in order to pay all of our bills instead of looking at the most efficient yields and where we make the highest break-even point and we make the most money. But we're still looking at higher and higher yields. And so you look at all the ag inputs. And so I've helped do some, I would say, going back to the early 70s when I was looking at my cash flows, and I'm looking at the cash flows that I helped put together the last 2 years, it's breathtaking, the amount of additional expense across the board for every input, from seed to fertilizer to you name it. And so we just keep speeding up that economic treadmill, trying to produce more corn in order to try to, pay all of the bills. And if you don't have production, you're in trouble. Well, so when you get to the point where you can't drink your own water, you're in trouble. And that's really where we're at. So we've gotten from an economic standpoint to now a health standpoint. And our aquifer is a lot like a sponge. And once you fill it up, it takes a really long time to clean it out. And so we've got to be looking at the amount of nitrate in our water as we do pumping. That needs to be a part of the equation. All the new technologies you've heard today are encouraging signs, but the state of Nebraska, for the most part, has used hope as a plan for being able to deal with this issue during my professional lifetime. And as we all know, hope is not a good plan. So I salute the Senator for bringing this bill forward. We are in support. I'll be glad to answer any questions if I could.
Senator Reapy.
Thank you, Chairman Hanson, and thank you for being here, Mr. Hanson. And I quote, "We've highlighted nitrate levels for decades." My question would be is what evidence do we have that we've mitigated the problem or made it even any progress? I can remember years ago to the Med Center, maybe 10 years ago, a study on pediatric cancer because of nitrates. And it seems to be getting worse, not better. So I don't know whether we're spinning our wheels. I'm just interested. As the president of IBM used to say, I'm tired of activity, I want to see results.
Well, thanks for the question. We had, I come from a family with strong conservation ethics. You have a moral responsibility to leave things better than you found them. And so my dad was in the Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor for years and years. So he was very, when I came back to the farm, he said, look, kid, if you're going to farm, you got to step up. And it's your job next to take care of the soil and water. So, so I've been working on this issue myself as a public official or the head of a farm organization for, about 50 years. And so in 2022, at our state convention, we highlighted this issue. We brought in the experts from Nebraska, from the University of Nebraska Med Center. And when you got done with those panels of experts that brought all of their charts and all of their data, and they put all of it up in PowerPoints, and you can get them at the Nebraska Farmers Union website if you like, and click on them. It was one of the most disappointing things I've ever seen, is that to your point, I was hoping for a lot more improvement, and based on my history and having gone back to the mid 70s on this issue, I just wasn't seeing it. In fact, I was seeing more nitrate levels. We were making some progress on groundwater withdrawals and water levels, but in terms of the content of the water and the nitrates, it was very distressing and very frustrating.
Do we have to look for other alternatives, like guaranteeing children that live in high nitrate areas get free bottled water?
To me, that's a worst case after the fact, solution, but it's better than nothing. But I hope we don't get to the point where we just get good with the business of accepting water levels that are not healthy to drink. We shouldn't get that comfortable with a longstanding problem.
I appreciate your response. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Reapy. Any other questions from the committee? I hesitate to ask Mr. Hanson. We could be here for quite a while, but nevertheless, I'm not sure there's any NRD testifiers following you. I should have asked this prior, but we have kind of a conflict in policies, I believe, with some NRDs, and that is in dealing with water levels, right? Level of the aquifer, restricting pumping of water, with the all good intention of saving our aquifers, which seems to be relatively static in most cases, but nevertheless we restrict the amount of water being pumped. And the reason I point that out is kind of a conflict in policy, I believe, because one of the best ways to get rid of nitrate is to bring it back up to the crop and let the crop use it. And so we're restricting the amount of pumpage, thus restricting the opportunity for crops to use that nitrates. Any comments on that?
Well, I'm a longtime supporter of NRDs gathering good water data in terms of if we're going to be in charge of managing groundwater, for goodness sakes, let's do it based on facts and information rather than, the emotion of the day when the river goes dry. And so, we have to gather that information. And so more of the emphasis has been on protecting the groundwater levels as a part of that than there has been, I think, in preserving the quality of the water itself. So it's taken us some time to get to where we're at right now, and it's going to take us some time to get back to a better place. But the example that you asked, Mr. Chairman, is one that I've raised myself many times, which is that if you're going to try to clean out the aquifer, you really have to take into account the amount of nitrogen that's already in there, and that has to be a part of your calculations, how much you need to grow a crop, because we're not going to clean up the aquifer by not running cleaner water through it, or hopefully rainwater, and using that you're continuing to pump out of that aquifer and use up the nitrogen that's already in there. And so, it is a kind of a trade-off, and so that our friends in the NRD have multiple responsibilities, I think, but I also think that sometimes we need to give higher priority to groundwater quality.
What I'm saying is they're linked at the hip, right? I
Yes.
mean, if we can pump the water, not overuse the water and waste the water, I'm not suggesting that, but pumping the water and feeding it to the crops is going to help cycle that water through the aquifer and get the nitrates up and used productively. It's one of the best recycling programs we'd have, but we have some NRD programs that limit the amount of water that can be pumped. So anyway, appreciate your
Right.
testimony.
Right, and their groundwater management responsibilities would indicate that they need to manage those areas where they're having significant declines.
We can talk out in the hall about
Yes.
that. Okay. All right, any questions? Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next proponent, LB 1368. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Craig Derrickson, CraigDerrickson. Thank you, Chairperson Halloran, Senator Ibach, and members of the Ag Committee for allowing me to provide testimony in support of LB 1368. I'm a retired federal employee, and I worked for the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service for more than 35 years. During my career, I provided assistance to farmers, ranchers, the NRDs, and communities to protect our natural resources. Nebraska citizens are fortunate to live in a state with a strong agricultural industry and an abundance of essential natural resources. Our soils are derived from native prairie grasses and are of high natural fertility, and many are well suited to crop production. Nebraska is also blessed with an abundant groundwater that is generally of good quality. 2/3 of the Ogallala Aquifer's water storage lies under Nebraska, and the aquifer touches 8 states. Approximately 88% of Nebraskans depend on groundwater for their drinking water source. However, our use of land and water for food production has not yet peaked, and the demand for increased food production to feed the planet will continue. There is plenty of evidence and science to show that a more sustainable approach to managing our soils and water supplies is needed. The main goal of sustainable and regenerative agriculture is to allow us to meet our needs for food and fiber in the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I am in support of the proposed nitrogen reduction Incentive Act described in LB 1368 to place emphasis on protecting our soil and water resources. There's growing interest in cost-effective farming practices that can improve soil health and water quality. For example, no-till and cover crops are primary practices farmers use to enhance soil quality, and additional practices such as crop rotation, nutrient management, and rotational grazing can be effective in protecting and enhancing water quality. Additionally, there are serious health concerns associated with reports showing that nearly 1 in 5 public water supplies and private wells in Nebraska consistently test high for nitrate nitrogen, and the number is growing. I support the use of incentive payments to farmers to protect water quality in LB 1368 and efforts to reduce the use of commercial fertilizers and to explore innovative technologies in sustainable farming and ranching practices. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Derrickson. Questions from the committee? Senator Reapy.
Chairman, thank you for being here. I guess, are you aware of any incentives that are available for crop rotation and tilling and the other
Well,
approaches that you've
yes,
done?
my former agency, the Natural Resources Conservation, has a number of conservation programs administered through the Farm Bill, and practices like those that I mentioned are available in different settings, depending upon what the producer is looking for.
But is the incentive so strong for corn production that it overwhelms the incentives?
Well, the number of people applying for assistance generally exceeds the money that they have available on an annual basis by 3 or 4 times. And the cost share payments that they make are tied to ways to, monitor the market. So I think they're competitive, but it's one of those individual decisions that a person needs to make of whether the carrot is attractive enough for them to want to participate in those programs.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Reapy. Any further questions? Seeing none, thanks for your testimony. Additional proponents, LB 1313. Oh, excuse me. LB 1368. We have a flying away sign here in the middle.
Jim, call me there.
Additional proponents, LB 1368. Seeing none, opponents? Opponents for LB 1368. Neutral capacity. Welcome. All right. Neutral?
Yep.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Edison McDonald, EDISON, MCDONALD. I'm here representing GC Resolve. We're a company committed to assisting farmers in transitioning to regenerative agricultural practices. I'm here to provide neutral testimony on LB 1368, the Nitrogen Reduction Incentive Act. We are thankful to Senator Ibach for her leadership to deal with our nitrogen issues and a forward-thinking mentality, but think there are some improvements that could ensure we address this properly and don't create a future similar issue. We know the problem with overuse of nitrates has created a situation where analysis from NDEQ, NRDs, USGS, UNMC, UNL, and others show Nebraska's waterways are under threat from rising levels of contaminants, including nitrates. These waterways are being identified as having a significant tie to increased pediatric cancer in the area and paints a scary picture that we need to utilize all potential tools to mitigate. We share the belief from the latest NDEE task force that family farmers are the answer. By leveraging the basic concepts of regenerative agriculture, we know that we can help to address these problems. By adding incentives for cover crops, buffer strips, and other practices, we can deal with these issues. This bill would be significantly improved by adding those practices, focusing on high nitrate waterways, and I'm sorry, it's 4 bill day and I missed my printouts, but I'll be sending y'all a map with our recommendations of target areas. better coordinating with NRCS, NDEE, and the USDA to attain matching funds so we can make this bill have a much larger impact and do something that could really help to impact our current nitrogen issue. While we appreciate the intent behind LB 1368 to encourage farmers to adopt efficient and sustainable practices, we do have some concerns regarding the inclusion of biologics. While these products have the potential to enhance soil health and reduce the reliance on synthetic fertilizers, there are some concerns about future impact. We don't want to rush into this and realize 20 years down the road that we've created a bigger problem than our current nitrogen problem. We have little information on these products, and the investments of several large-scale billionaires like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg that have backed these products give us pause. This could be part of a positive formula to address our nitrate issue. We just want to make sure that we are proceeding cautiously and utilizing the dollars in the most essential manner by targeting those problematic areas and adding traditional regenerative practices that we know work and are safe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Additional neutral testimony? Seeing none, we will welcome back Senator Ibach if you'd like to close.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who helped testify today. I want to start by saying thank you to the co-sponsors of this bill and to everyone that showed up today to testify, and especially to this committee. I think we as a committee can come together and figure out a way to move this issue forward, especially with all the positive support we had today. And I would just reiterate that this is the start of a very, very important conversation. And I think it will impact Nebraska for many years. Senator Hughes, to your point on how much does it cost? Right now, anhydrous went way up during pandemic, but those costs have come down right now. I have in my notes it's about $325 to $340 a ton right now. It's really hard to compare apples to apples because anhydrous is sold by the ton and biologics are sold by the acre. So it's really hard to compare those apples. Many farms, including ours, use both. And so it's just a strategy of inputs versus yield. Biologics run for our operation and for some of those that I've visited with during seminars between 15 and 27, so maybe like a $22 per acre approximate cost. So that kind of satisfies your piece. And for those who don't like incentives, I would just like to point to the ethanol industry in our state, and we would probably have no ethanol industry if it weren't for those initial incentives. Further, I don't want to see what's happening in Minnesota happen here. If we don't step up and start the conversation, I don't know who will. And I think bills like this really ensure that our farmers are positioned to be proactive in across the state. I would also say to John Hansen's point, and he is a champion in testifying for everything agriculture, we do have the technologies to make a difference. I think his comment was we have to find these technologies. And solutions like this speak to his point. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention UNL in their research efforts. I know they're doing incredible research on biologics and other sustainable ag processes. And the NRDs, I visited with several of them around my district, and they do an incredible job of monitoring and knowing exactly what our groundwater looks like and how we can impact it. So I appreciate that as well. Finally, I would just mention that I think everyone would agree that sustainable ag is a real game changer for our state. It has been the last several years, and I know that there's so much more innovation coming out every day excuse me. And I think we need to really position ourselves to be in the driver's seat. And I think efforts like 1368 do exactly that. So I would thank you for your time. I would thank you for processing all the information you received today. I would also again thank everyone who came and testified in favor of it. I think they provided a lot of information for us to process and use going forward. So thank you again.
Thank you, Senator Ibach. Any closing questions from the committee? Yes, Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay.
Stump the senator.
No, I just have some more maybe philosophical questions.
Okay.
So I appreciate the intent of this bill, right, and what you're trying to accomplish. Is the end goal or what you're trying to accomplish with this reduction in nitrogen in groundwater, drinking water? Is that kind of a goal of this?
I think that has to be the goal just because of the information and the way that some organizations present nitrates in our groundwater supply are the result of cancer and pediatric cancer. We always seem to be reactive in how we control that narrative. This is a way to be proactive. I don't think it's an overnight solution. I think it's taken us several years to get the nitrates in the ground. It's going to take us several years to reverse that process. But this is one step that we can take in doing that.
Okay, and I agree with pretty much everything you just said. So say we find out with this program, the incentive program, that we do find a reduction in nitrate levels. And then even with growing concern or mounting evidence about the nitrate levels in childhood cancers, like you mentioned, we start to see actually a decrease in childhood cancers. Would you then be in favor of then regulating the use of nitrogen on water or in land?
Well, first of all, that would be a win-win if we reduced it and then reduced the number of pediatric cancer patients as well. I don't ever want to have to monitor how producers, how farmers and ranchers manage their operations, because I think that's a big piece in how we become successful. It's by giving farmers and ranchers the freedom to manage their operations with best practices. And I think, as I mentioned before, I think they're very responsible in how they do that already. I think what this does is identify ways for them to be better producers.
I agree.
Does that answer your question?
I agree, yes. The concern I have is once you stop incentivizing, how much do you incentivize something, right? So say we're seeing a reduction, we're seeing the goals that are happening, then do we spend 20, 30, 50, $100 million incentivizing this? Or
No.
do we trust them to stop that? If there's a concern that this actually causes childhood cancers, I think, would there ever be a room or the idea of possibly regulating it instead of incentivizing it? Or are you against that?
I would be against regulating it because I trust farmers and ranchers to know best practices. They're the best stewards of the land now. I think futuristically, products and innovations and sustainable ag practices will become such the norm that we won't have to regulate it. Farmers and ranchers will use the best practices that are already in place. This is a piece of that.
Sure. Thank you very much. I do like the bill. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Thank you. Any further questions? Can't see it. Thank you, Senator Ibach, for the bill.
Thank
For
you.
the record, the online comments were 10 proponents, 2 opponents, and 0 neutral for LB 1368. We'll move on to, that closes this bill. Move on to LB 1313. Welcome, Senator Dover. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Fun Committee.
You have sunlight in this room.
And the Sun Committee.
Yeah.
Special
That's
for the
great.
Ag
That's
Committee.
right. Happy room.
Ready when you are, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Halloran, and good afternoon, committee members. For the record, my name is Robert Dover, Robert Dover. I represent District 19, which consists of Madison County and the south half of Pierce County. I've introduced LB 1313 on behalf of the Nebraska Farm Bureau. Others who testify me will speak to some of the specifics on how the plan will function. I want to speak to the intent. LB 1313 is about providing an affordable health care benefit plan. It allows nonprofit agricultural membership organizations to offer non-insurance, high-quality, affordable health care benefit plans to their members. I want to highlight two key points: non-insurance and affordability. The plans will be offered are non-insurance plans. However, similar to insurance, they would offer coverage that would include office visits, hospitalization, preventive care, emergency room services, maternity care, as well as coverage for mental health and substance abuse. The plans would be fully underwritten and individually rated. These plans would also be affordable. Plans similar to what would be offered through this bill are already available through several faith-based organizations. We will be doing through LB 1313 is offering another option. I have a son-in-law who farms by Pierce, Nebraska. My daughter works in our company and they have a 2 and a 3-year-old. They are challenged to find affordable health care coverage for their farming family of 4. This plan will provide them, and many families like them, a family-friendly health care alternative. There is another benefit to families. In many cases across Nebraska, one spouse has to work for an employer who provides health insurance, so their entire family has coverage. In some cases, this is the sole reason for the employment. This affordable health care option frees the spouse to choose to be home or to work, to raise a family, or to follow their dreams in a job of their own choosing. Simply put, it provides them the freedom to choose. The goal of LB 1313 is simple: a high-quality, affordable healthcare option for those who want it. I'm excited about what this bill has to offer, and I look forward to providing this as an option to Nebraskans. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Senator Dover. Question, Senator Rigby.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I first wanted to note it's a bummer of a bill number 1313.
That's a lucky. That's the apostles and the Holy Ghost.
Okay.
Thanks, too.
My next question, if I may, sir, is I noticed that you had 44 co-sponsors. I want to know why you failed to get the last 5.
There was, I guess, time and my impatience, Senator Reapy. There was one, Senator Kavanaugh, who wanted some additional answers and was very analytical in his, analysis of the bill.
Okay. Now, answer me this question. Is this product limited to farmers and ranchers?
No, it's limited by membership, which I believe is, and don't hold me to it, but somewhere around $50 to $55 annual fee.
Yes. As a comment, it's not an insurance plan.
No.
It's independent of that, and I think it's a great plan in a lot of other states, and I think it's good for competition, particularly out where options are limited, particularly outside the urban areas. So I commend you for it, and I hope it's a breeze through this legislature.
Thank you, Senator Reapy.
Thank you, Senator Reapy. Questions, Senator Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Dover, what is the fiscal limit on this?
There is no fiscal note.
That it? Senator Hughes?
Do you know about how many people would qualify for this plan?
No, I don't. Perhaps that will follow me can answer, but basically it kind of fills a gap to where I believe that if you're somewhere around 300% of poverty, where it starts to really benefit the individual. And I guess one point I'll just kind of where you're at on that is to say that once you enter the plan, you're rated and you join a group. So never is your insurance, if you would say come down with cancer or something catastrophic, your insurance is not going to go up and you will not be kicked off of the plan because you're in a group.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hughes. Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you for the open. You'll stick around for close.
All right, thank you, Senator Halloran.
Thank you.
Chairman Halloran.
You're fine. Proponents of LB 1313. Good afternoon, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Halloran, Ag Committee. My name is Mark McCarg, MARKMCHARGUE. I'm currently the president of Nebraska Farm Bureau and a farmer in Merritt County, Nebraska. On behalf of Nebraska Farm Bureau Ag Leaders Working Group, as well, we offer support to LB 1313. For your reference, the Ag Leaders Working Group consists of the following: Nebraska cattlemen, corn growers, Farm Bureau, pork producers, sorghum, soybean, dairy, wheat, and the renewable fuels of Nebraska. We are excited to offer our support for the proposal to allow agricultural nonprofit organizations to offer private non-ACA compliant health plans to lessen the cost of healthcare to farmers and ranchers, as well as many independent and self-employed individuals or independent small businesses that are concentrated in rural areas of the state. The cost of healthcare and health insurance has been one of the top issues facing farm and ranch family members for decades. In visiting with our members across the state, it's not uncommon to hear stories that they're paying upwards of $30,000 to $40,000 in annual premiums if they weren't able to be subsidized by the federal marketplace. We had a survey in 2023, and that survey told us that 81% of the farmer ranch members identified the cost of insurance as one of the main concerns when they started thinking about health care for their families. Membership surveys in recent years continue to constantly show the cost of health insurance as one of the top 3 issues of concerns for our members. And then, you know, in agriculture, there's lots of things we can think about, but for insurance to be, the cost of healthcare to be on the top 3 is pretty significant. Since ACA premiums are unaffordable for many farmers and ranchers, either they don't purchase health insurance or they have to have a spouse, as mentioned by Senator Dover, that works off the farm to provide those benefits. Our surveys over the years consistently show that almost 25% of farm and ranch families' spouses work off the farm solely for health benefit reasons. Getting health insurance coverage for farm and ranch families has not only been costly, but it's also been a major disruptor with the family farm ranch operations when the spouse is forced to work at an off-farm job just to get health insurance. Senator Dover mentioned, you know, when you start thinking about raising a family, we work a lot with young farmers and ranchers that are trying to enter into the industry. And many times there is a choice that one of the spouses, if they have the choice, would rather stay home and be a part of the operation and maybe help raise the kids versus putting them into childcare or something like that. So there's significant things other than healthcare that surround this topic. NEFB and Ag Leaders Working Group strongly believe there is significant need for more affordable health plans that will meet the needs of our members and potentially members who are not eligible for the federal health insurance subsidies. There's a lot of reasons to look at why nonprofit agriculture organizations that primarily serve rural areas to provide health benefits are important. These organizations exist out in rural areas. Our research shows that 53% of the individual health insurance plans in the marketplace are actually sold in Nebraska in rural areas, even though there's a lot less population in rural areas. Independent small businesses and self-employed businesses are a mainstay for not only Nebraska agriculture, but provide the foundation for rural communities across the state. These are businesses that are maybe welders and plumbers that also maybe have not access to the federal exchange, or maybe the premiums are too high, but they support the ag industry and they are in the rural areas that support agriculture. We appreciate your consideration of these comments, and we urge you in advance to advance LB 1313, the right number, to general file. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for your testimony. Questions from the committee? So this is not technically insurance, or is it?
No, it is not. It's not insurance. It's a shared plan, but it is underwritten by a third party, and we will have some testifiers later that would be the organization that would provide the support and the insurance backing for that.
Consider use.
Thank you, Chairman. How come this is just happening now? Like, farm family, my sister-in-law works solely for insurance. I know so many people that do. I think these group plans have been around for a very, very long time. I'm just kind of confused why this hasn't happened earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it's not insurance, so I think until the industry really to some degree has gotten so out of hand that I think alternatives have started to come into the market. And so
Okay.
when we start looking at group plans, that's very different, but many times in agriculture, we can't be a part of a group plan. So these shared plans have popped up. And I think it was mentioned that there's some religious organizations that will do a similar type of plan that's underwritten. But, you know, part of the problem is even our young producers, I mean, they're going without insurance, some of them because of cost. You could say, well, that's a risk reward. But in our case, when insurance wasn't as expensive, it still was significant when we were young, starting farming. We felt like we were healthy, but our fourth child had a severe disability. And quite frankly, if we did not have insurance, we would have lost the farm. And we don't want that to happen. And so I think this type of plan that many of our neighbor states do have, but it's pretty new, have been highly successful.
Yeah. No,
So we're kind of following suit there.
Yeah. Good. Thanks.
Okay, further questions? Senator Ricky?
One quick one. It's my understanding that if approved, you are tentatively planning on having it administered through a very successful Farm Bureau plan out of Tennessee.
Yes, that is correct. And Tennessee is here to talk about some of the more details. If you have questions on how they would actually administrate that and kind of their.
There's a proven model there.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Ricky. Any further questions? Thank you so much. Okay, additional proponents, LB 1313. Welcome.
Afternoon.
Chairman Halloran and members of the Agriculture Committee. My name is Dawn Kuchera, Dawnkucera. My husband and I are fifth-generation farmers, raising corn and soybeans along with operating an agronomy business called Sandermere Seed and Supply near Madison. I am also a member of the Nebraska Farm Bureau Federation Board of Directors, and I am here today on its behalf to offer strong support for LB 1313, which would allow nonprofit agricultural membership organizations to offer a non-insurance, high-quality, and more affordable health benefits to its members. As you probably know, the average costs of Affordable Care Act individual health insurance plans from the federal marketplace have skyrocketed in the last 10 years. As an example, my husband and I currently have an ACA health insurance plan that costs us $1,315 per month at a subsidized rate, which amounts to an annual cost of $15,838. Combining that with our high deductible and copays, our annual cost for health insurance and care has averaged about $20,000 to $40,000 per year out of pocket over the last 8 years. For many farmers and ranchers who elect family plans, their annual premiums could amount to $25,000 to $35,000 per year in unsubsidized premiums, not even counting the out-of-pocket costs of high deductibles and copays. To say the least, these high health insurance premiums and out-of-pocket costs for healthcare make a significant dent in our bottom line and even put our farm and agronomy business on very thin ice during years of drought or low commodity prices. I have talked with many younger farmer and ranch families in my area who have kids at home that are covered under their family health plan. I would estimate that over half of these farm and ranch families have a spouse working outside the home and operation because of the need of an employer-based health insurance benefit. Under the non-insurance health plans authorized by LB 1313, the offering could be priced using the pre-existing conditions and individual medical underwriting to decide coverage and pricing for risk factors. These cost containment measures allow the plans to be priced 40 to 60% less than the unsubsidized rates offered by the ACA. Even in our case of receiving a subsidy on the ACA premium, we would potentially see a $6,500 per year savings on similar health coverage with similarly lower out-of-pocket health costs due to much lower deductibles and copays. In many ways, the self-employed and the independent small businesses are discriminated against in the current health insurance markets because they do not receive the benefits received by employer-employee large group discounted rates, where the employers typically pick up the lion's share of the health premium for the employee. In conclusion, we urge the committee to favorably consider LB 1313 and advance it to the general file. Passage of this bill would provide a great service and cut significant costs for many farmers, ranchers, and other rural Nebraskans that participate in the annual health insurance market. Thank you for your time and consideration. Are there any questions?
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. Additional proponents, LB 1313. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of LB 1313. I am Erin Petersilie, ERINPETERSILIE, and the director of the Kansas Farm Bureau Health Plans. When you hear Farm Bureau, most don't think healthcare. We think insurance, education, advocacy, and service to our members. And today I'm going to tell you our story and of course answer any questions that you may have. The first question we get is, why would Farm Bureau think about offering health coverage? We are a grassroots organization, meaning we operate, and how we operate is directly based on the needs of our membership. Kansas has a membership of over 105,000 members, and like you, those involved in agriculture make up the backbone of our economy. Prior to 2019, when we did our legislative session to pass this, rising healthcare costs was the #1 issue being raised by our members. Health insurance was the biggest monthly expense our members were facing. Then we must ask the question, how do we make health insurance work for our families so that they can continue farming? So we started researching, and 8% of our membership was purchasing their own coverage through private entities. These were people that were either not taking advantage of tax credits or were not eligible for them. Another 8% of our membership was choosing to go uninsured. And you can imagine what that does when we talk about a very dangerous industry and choosing not to go insured. So we chose to partner with Tennessee Farm Bureau to be our administrator of our plan, and the UMR to provide our network. UMR's network would provide us with nationwide coverage, a network of doctors and hospitals where our members could then choose providers that made sense for them. So why would we go this route? For many people, purchasing health insurance through the federally facilitated marketplace makes sense for them and their families, and that's great. Coming to us from the ACA has only made sense if you were at that 300% plus of the poverty level. So who do we cover? We know that family farms really work when the family is on the farm making them work, and that every farm dreams of bringing home the next generation or getting to expand their operation. Our plan has allowed for people to leave the job in town, come home, and thus grow or transition the operation. Our next group of people that come to us, similar to farmers, are those small business people that may or may not employ 1 to 2 people. I want you to think plumbers, electricians, chiropractors, childcare providers, and dentists. And then our third set has been children. For example, we have a couple in our town who both teach. The school provides that insurance for them, and they had a baby. For them to add that child to their policy would cost them $700 a month. We can cover that baby for around $250 a month and have the same deductible and out-of-pocket maximum as they would have on the school policy. In short, we're saving people money. So let's talk through how this works. Any person is welcome to actually go onto our website, walk into their local Farm Bureau Financial Service office, or call the toll-free number and talk to somebody and get a quote. They can see the prices, the schedule of benefits for our products. We offer plans for those that are under the age 65, short-term care plans, dental and vision. Those are all considered unregulated products. And then we also offer Medicare supplement plans, which do have to meet the state and federal guidelines. Once somebody gets a quote, they can choose if they want to apply. For somebody to apply, they must have a paid Farm Bureau membership. We offer 4 different types of plans that they can choose for under the under 65 products. These plans have a variety of deductibles and out-of-pocket maximums. And then all of the plans would go through an underwriting process where medical questions will be asked and medical records may need to be provided. There is a maximum look-back period of 7 years. After a member has submitted all of the records needed, the application will proceed through underwriting. Oops, sorry, that went really quick.
Okay,
Go ahead.
we may have questions now.
That's okay.
Senator Holcroft?
Yeah, okay, continue to finish your story, please.
Okay, I will do that. So once they go through that underwriting, then they would get a letter that would notify them of their amount. They'd pay the premium. The biggest thing to know is they're never going to go through underwriting again. Once they're in, they're in. There are no limits, and members cannot receive a rate increase because of usage of the plan. So what are our successes? Today, 16,896 members are covered with plans that work for them. Members have reported back to us of saving up to 60% on premiums that were as good or better than what they came from. Because we can enroll members year-round, we get people covered without having to wait for a special enrollment period. We don't charge per dependent, so no matter if you have 2 or 10 people on the plan, the rate is the same. This is how we're going to repopulate Western Kansas. We have a family with 10 kids on the plan. They saved almost $30,000 a year by coming to us. And I think we can all think of ways that that kind of savings would help our households. Our small rural hospitals have seen an increase in covered people that walk through the doors. And we know that the more people that we treat that have coverage, it is better for our bottom line. Our members also enjoy not having to sign up for coverage every year and their premium not being tied to their income. I'm sure there's more success stories, but with that, let's answer some questions.
Senator Rigby?
One of the questions, thank you, I'm very impressed. One of my original questions, how many you had enrolled, you answered that with the 16,900. Is this guaranteed renewal?
Yes, as long as they pay their premiums and they still have to continue their Farm Bureau membership.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. I do have to leave temporarily.
Senator Holcroft?
Thank you, Chairman Holland. So it sounds like insurance to me. What's the difference between what you're doing here and insurance?
Okay, so it comes down to terminology, and that's the Affordable Care Act says that insurance cannot ask health questions. We cannot rate people. We cannot deny people. Every 30-year-old is going to pay the same in the ACA. The only 2 things we can really rate on are tobacco and their zip code. Where a health plan, we can ask those health questions. We can rate and or deny people.
Okay, so you can deny people.
We can deny people, absolutely, yes.
So how do you make up the, I mean, typically premiums don't cover. I mean, you buy insurance or healthcare because if you really get seriously ill, you can't afford it. And typically your past premiums probably wouldn't cover either. So how do you cover everybody? I mean, for serious injuries, I mean, how do you raise money, I guess?
Okay, well, there are, so we went through, and Ben may be able to speak a little bit more to this, who's gonna follow me and go through the actual administration of the plan. We went through and really looked at, I guess what I want to say, really making sure that we had rates that would cover. At the same time, you're picking, in a lot of ways, the healthiest people. So not that you aren't ever going to have things. I mean, we have this last year, we've had a lot of NICU babies, that it just is. But at the same time, we have a lot of really healthy people that help offset that and make it a good risk.
Okay, thank you. Senator Hughes?
Thank you, Chairman. Interesting how you guys are doing this. And I'm going to clarify. So anybody that's a Farm Bureau member can have access to this. So I own a gas station. I have a couple employees. As long as I pay my Farm Bureau dues, I can access into this if I would like.
That is correct.
Okay, and then second, and I guess this is not really a question, but don't say that if people enroll in this, then they're not going to work anymore because we have a workforce shortage, and like that will stop everybody for going. Right? So like, they're still going to work.
They're still going to,
but they just have better coverage here.
Yes. Okay. No, you're okay. So I see what you're saying there. At the same time, when we talk about bringing people home to expand those farming operations, we also talk about, we have a childcare shortage. I mean, I can't imagine that you guys have a plethora of childcare if we're,
We're in
you
the
know,
same boat.
in the same boat that we are. And, you know, we bring people home and we want to expand these farming operations and we want to do all these things. And it's, for some people, like they need to stay home because childcare isn't an option or it's so expensive. So how do we help them? And this, for some, has been a good way. That's great.
Additional questions? She had sent her hands.
Thank you. I think I like anything that gets people off of government-funded healthcare.
Okay.
So I appreciate the approach here. How is this similar or different than like MediShare or Good Samaritan Health? I think those are the ones those are probably the similar, I'll say, insurance options that people would have that was maybe referenced earlier. Is this very similar to something like that with the same concept?
There would be some pieces that are the same concept. This is going to look and feel very much like insurance, and our next presenter is going to talk about that in some ways. Is you're going to have an actual card, you're going to have a network, you're going to have claims that are submitted on behalf of you. You are not having to negotiate what the cost of your procedure is. So you have some contracts. I mean, you have a contract, and it's gonna, here's your co-insurance, here's your, you know, maximum out of pocket, etc. So that in those ways it'd be different.
Thank you. Any additional questions? It's magic.
There we go. That's I'm gonna have to use
It's
all
magic.
these.
So again, you, with the health benefit plan, you can or cannot ask health questions of the potential client.
We can ask health questions.
So you're cultivating a group of people that are typically very healthy, and that's why it's lower rates.
Correct. At the same time, I'm also going to tell you, you do not need to be in perfect health. So and I'm just going to say that, I'm expanding on that just a little bit because people look at this and they're like, well, I take high blood pressure medicine, Aaron. Are you going to kick me off? Am I not going to be allowed? No.
But your rate will be higher.
Potentially.
It's magic.
Magic.
Okay, no further questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Additional proponents, LB 1313. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Ben Sanders, BEN-SANDERS. I'm with the Tennessee Farm Bureau representing Tennessee Farm Bureau health plans today. You've heard a substantial amount about the need of these programs. I can't speak any better to the need in Nebraska. I can speak to our operation in Tennessee and how it helps our members and how it operates, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. In Tennessee, we have been operating Farm Bureau health plans since 1947. We've been at this for a long time. What I'm very proud of is that during that whole time, 76 years, 77, whatever the math is, we average a 98% retention ratio. By contract, which are evergreen contracts, to answer a question earlier, we can't drop members off the plan for health status. Our members, however, can leave us at any time with 10 days notice. So our members choose every month if this plan is best for their families or not. And I'm very proud of our retention ratio. I'm proud of the coverage we offer. Some of that has been addressed. We offer comprehensive coverage, a broad range of different plans to meet the needs of individuals or families. I'm proud of the networks that we offer as well. Networks are very important to Farm Bureau members, so we work hard to have broad statewide networks for our Farm Bureau members. And more importantly, I am proud of the financial security and the peace of mind that it offers. For most of us, and I'm putting myself in that category, to go to bed at night wondering if a medical catastrophe is going to make you lose the farm or lose the house or fill in the blank is a terrible feeling. And I'm very proud of the financial peace of mind that we offer our members. Along with that, I'm proud of our financial stability. We operate in a very conservative manner, but a conservative manner both from an economy of operational costs, but also a conservative manner of planning for the future. We forecast all of our costs and our risk. It's long story short, it's important for us to have enough money in our reserve accounts to pay future claims, so our members never worry about whether their claims are going to be paid. I'm proud of the other Farm Bureau states that we work with. This was referenced earlier as well. Currently, we're working with Kansas, Indiana, South Dakota, and Texas Farm Bureaus and their health plans. 2 other states, Iowa and Arkansas, also have a health plan. They have partnered with other administrators because that was the best choice for their members. But I'm proud of so many farm bureaus that are looking at these plans. Farm Bureau populations are strikingly similar from state to state. And so it's no surprise that farm bureaus, as they are looking for a solution for their healthcare needs, they're looking at us. And the last thing I'll say, Mr. Chairman, is that I can speak to the importance of these plans. My family is in the farming business in Tennessee. I grew up with one of these plans. I've seen it firsthand. I've experienced it firsthand. I'm proud of what we offer and how we serve the Tennessee Farm Bureau. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Senator Holbrook.
So you have a network of doctors that you've lined up. Now, is it like Medicaid where the doctor says, this is how much it costs and this is how much we've been paying? Or, I mean, is that the same way, or do you have agreements with the doctors for that procedure you only have paid this much?
It would look very similar to traditional insurance plans, sir. We use United Healthcare for our network. They're in the business of putting together networks, so we rent a network from United. We did that in Tennessee. We partnered with them in Tennessee. As other state farm bureaus have implemented these plans, we actually bring United with us, and we utilize their network in other states. When we go into a state, on behalf, of course, of that state's farm bureau, we do a network analysis to make sure that the United network is broad enough. And if it's not, then we ask that they broaden it to make sure that that network has what they need. As far as the reimbursements that you referenced, it's hard to make comparisons on reimbursements between health coverage or health insurance companies and providers, but it would not look like Medicaid or Medicare reimbursements, if that helps.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Additional questions? So I'm trying to wrap my arms around this. So you, to cultivate this group of relatively healthy people, which helps obviously lower the rates, you have to deny some people coverage, right? What's your percentage of denial?
Sure. On average, we accept 9 out of 10 applicants for coverage. That was the average in Tennessee, and that has become the average in other states as well. That's our acceptance average rate. So 9 out of 10 members that apply for coverage are offered coverage through us.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Additional proponents, LB 1313. Are there opponents to LB 1313? Is there anyone in the neutral for LB 1313? The neutral?
Neutral, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Agriculture Committee, my name is Eric Dunning, ERICDUNNING. I'm the Director of Insurance, and I'm here today to testify in a neutral capacity on LB 1313. In all of my years testifying in front of legislative committees, I am quite certain that this is my first time in front of the Agriculture Committee.
God bless you.
So, Mr. Chairman, LB 1313 creates a type of insurance contract that's outside of the jurisdiction of the Department of Insurance if it meets a number of very tightly defined standards. In particular, it's going to allow certain nonprofit agricultural organizations to offer health plans outside of the jurisdiction of the department. I'm here today to be a resource to answer any questions that the committee may have on a topic that's a bit uncommon for the committee. By way of background, the department has had a long history of trying to work with stakeholders to develop solutions to the problems that agriculture in particular faces as a result of the Affordable Care Act. The department has traveled the state on our annual listening tours and heard the concerns of farmers and ranchers. And through that experience, we tried to explain to the federal government through the public notice and comment period some of the challenges that the federal government has created through regulatory flip-flopping, as well as trying to work with them to develop sensible solutions to these issues. But we didn't have any success. we have continued to work with the Farm Bureau and local insurers to creatively bring solutions to Nebraska's agriculture under existing law. I also want to say that it's too bad that this bill is necessary to meet the needs of Nebraska. We've seen an ever-expanding scope of requirements placed on all health insurers at both the state and federal level, which has made it very difficult to offer health insurance to people at a price that they can afford to pay unless they're given government subsidies. The subsidies available under the Affordable Care Act marketplace, while very generous, do not necessarily work well for people in agriculture due to significant year-to-year variations in income, and those may not be extended. The federal government has increased those subsidies to offset the cost of increased government mandates, but those subsidies under the ARPA are due to be phased out in 2025, and I don't know what their status will be in Washington. The bill in front of you today seeks to overcome the cost of federal regulation by exempting the health plans from that definition of insurance, and therefore places those outside of state and federal mandates and the jurisdiction of the department. I will tell you that I have checked in with folks in other states with similar plans on the books, and I've not heard concerns or complaints from policyholders in those states. So that now that I've given you some brief background on the regulatory status of those plans, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, particularly with regard to, say, the cost-sharing ministries or some of the other questions that I heard from Senator Halloran.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dunning. Questions? Senator Hansen.
Thank you. Yeah, could you expand on that a little bit about my question? Is this like how similar, how different is this from similar cost-sharing health contracts like Medishare and
So they're similar in an important way in that under Nebraska law, should 1313 pass, it's not insurance, which I think a lawyer would describe as a legal fiction, right? I mean, it behaves like insurance, but under Nebraska law, it's quote unquote not insurance. So it exempts it from all of those requirements that we've talked about and allows the entity to underwrite and do some of the other things that they need to do to control costs. That is the status that cost-sharing ministries currently enjoy under Nebraska law. However, in terms of how it feels to have a contract with these enterprises, I'm trying very hard to avoid magic words like insurance. I think it's a little more. From how I understand these plans to work in Iowa or Kansas or some of the other states that we've heard about, it's going to feel a little bit more like major medical coverage. You're going to have networks, et cetera, and you're going to know in advance what they're going to pay for and what they won't pay for. There have been some challenges on some of the Medishare programs in terms of how that's worked for policyholders.
Can I ask another question, please? So why do we, I'm curious, is it just solely for regulatory issues that we have to even put this in statute for them to even do this?
If you describe it as regulatory issues, I think you'd be understating what's the situation, right? I mean, in particular, I think what you've heard today is a description of how important, how powerful underwriting is in terms of getting coverage available to people at an effective price. And by not being quote unquote insurance under state and therefore federal law, they're allowed to underwrite in a way that makes more sense for the people that they serve.
Okay. It's ironic because I'm actually going to insurance here in a little bit to do a hearing on a bill. I've never been to insurance in 6 years. So I'm going to have a bill there for the first time talking about insurance. So.
Look, I feel your pain.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Other questions? Yes, Senator Yu.
Thank you, Chairman. So like, because we're not calling it insurance, I think like there's a bill out, let's say the bill out right now passes that if you do, while you're in there, clean it out, right? The colon, whatever. If you do a colonoscopy and they take the polyps, they have to cover it or whatever, something like that.
Yes.
This group wouldn't be required to do that.
It wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But just because they're not required to under statute doesn't mean
they might not.
that they wouldn't make that decision anyway. It's just that this mandate would not specifically apply to them.
Because when we have it as a bill and are mandating it, we're saying insurance companies have to do this. And
Correct.
This would be outside that.
Correct.
So that's kind of how you get away from sometimes as legislators, we have these mandates that cost more money on all the entities that were doing this, and these guys would be a little bit exempt of that.
They would be exempt, but I don't know that that's what I'm hearing is driving the difference in price.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I think it's that going back to the underwriting.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, thank you, Senator. So you probably addressed this in your testimony, but just for my own clarification, should the Farm Bureau have a health benefit plan like they're proposing here offered in Nebraska without this bill?
I don't think they could, because you wouldn't be able to avoid things like underwriting. You wouldn't be able to avoid all of the requirements that have been imposed on the insurers by state and federal government. It's by creating this concept of not insurance, or using that same not insurance concept that we got out of the Medishare plans, that they can get this regulatory treatment.
Okay, all right. That seeing no other questions, thanks for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Additional proponents, LB 1313. Oh, we are neutral, excuse me. Neutral for 1313. Seeing none, Senator Dover. Would you like to close?
I could just answer maybe a couple of questions. One was, Senator Hughes asked, why is this happening now? I think basically when this federal legislation comes down, it's so complicated and it adjusts, and then there's opinions given as to what does this mean, how is this handled by the agencies and stuff. But I think the industry's trying to figure out, first of all, what are the new rules of the game and try to find solutions. And obviously, through the Affordable Care Act, there were carve-outs, and one is obviously religious carve-out. So Medishare is one of them. Another one was memberships. And I do believe that they tried one here in Nebraska, but the problem they ran into was, I think it was for farmers, but was the question of what an employer was, because you could have a group thing with an employer, but the problem was you couldn't be considered an employer if you were a farmer. At least that's my limited understanding. So they have been trying things that was found to be unkindly, well, not workable, and so that failed. So we're kind of, this is another approach. And again, I think it's because of just trying to solve the affordability issue for families and everyone, right? Everyone. And then while Senator Hansen is not here, I'd just like to talk about really briefly what the main difference is. I had a Farm Bureau agent, and I said, hey, I'm paying $35,000 a year for my family, my kids and everything with deductibles and stuff. And I said, what do you do? And he said, well, actually, I have Medishare. So I actually enrolled in Medishare. And I mean, it's a good option, I think, but the frustrating thing that I had was that they give you a website to go to and say, these are your providers, right? So here's the list of different doctors and stuff in my community. When upon calling them, there must have been some different other group too, because I didn't necessarily was able to work with all the lists that was on their website. And so I really believe what this legislation will allow to have happen is through United Health. I think that we're going to have a wider, broader provider network that was offered at least through Medishare, and that's what I can speak to. So I wanted to really bring that up with Senator Hansen had asked. Is there any other questions that anyone might have?
Any other questions from the committee? No.
Okay. I introduced LB 1313 because it's a good bill. It enacts positive change. It brings affordability to healthcare, and it helps families. I believe it makes Nebraska a better place for everyone. Because I believe in LB 1313 does, I'm making it my priority bill. Based on the number of co-sponsors we have, the testimony you heard today, and all the support this bill has, I'm asking the committee's support so this bill can move onto the floor and be advanced. I thank you for your time today, and I thank you for supporting the bill. Thank you, Chairman Halloran.
Thank you, Senator Dover. There's no questions, so we'll finish that. So for the record, you'll love this. There was 0 proponents, 0 opponents, and 0 in the neutral. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. All right. That concludes LB 1313. We will move on to LB 1396. Senator Murman.
Bugs and worms and.
More bugs.
You know how to clear out a room, Senator.
That's all right, gonna be a lot of bugs and worms.
It's bug day.
Welcome, Senator Murman.
This is our last bill.
I know.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman Halloran and members of the Agriculture Committee. My name is Senator Dave Murman. I represent 8 counties, mostly along the southern tier in the middle part of the state. I'm here to bug you about LB 1396, a bill to ensure insects, worms, or bugs products in human foods are clearly labeled as such. Before I begin, I'd like to address a possible concern on this bill. Some might say this is not a major problem. It is true that we're not seeing insects used as an ingredient in food regularly today. That being said, we can look at articles and reports that are coming out today and then prepare to have basic guardrails put in place through a proactive piece of legislation. In a 2019 article, Food Safety Magazine writes, in Western countries, the use of insects as food and feed is gaining attention as consumers learn of the nutritional and environmental benefits associated with them. A 2020 article by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United States, or United Nations, argues that insects are a potentially valuable protein source to feed a growing global population. These examples do certainly show a market and government desire to start to normalize insect-based foods. However, this is not an attack on any product. In my opinion, if people want to eat bugs, it's a free country and they can do that. But what we should have in place is some kind of labeling process so consumers are not accidentally or even being tricked into buying insect-based foods that they would not normally desire to purchase or consume. LB 1396 offers a simple solution. It amends the Nebraska Pure Food Act, which already ensures food is sold with proper labeling, and adds a provision that any food that contains more than 5% insect, worm, or bug product that does not clearly have that labeled would be deemed misbranded. Thank you, and you're welcome to bug me with any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Murman. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. Do we know how many products contain over 5% bug parts? Like
I
how
don't
many
think
does it
so.
affect?
Right now, as far as I know, there aren't any bug, or any, not bugs, but
There's lots of
any
bugs.
products sold in Nebraska that contain
Okay.
even close to 5%
Can I ask one
bugs.
follow-up? What brought you, I guess what made you bring this bill?
Well, I've read articles about food companies and even food companies coming into Nebraska that have bugs in their food, part of their food product.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Additional questions from the committee? We got to do better than this. All right, thank you, Senator Murman. Proponents for LB 1396. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon again. For the record, my name is John Hansen, John Hansen, Hansen, still president of Nebraska Farmers Union, still our lobbyist. We do not have a clear set of policies in Nebraska Farmers Union relative to eating bugs, but we do have fairly clear policy relative to labeling. And labeling is the bargain between food producers, food processors, food retailers, and food consumers. And food consumers ought to have the ability to be able to know what it is that they're purchasing, and that they can make an informed decision about what it is that they want to consume. And that's for these kinds of products, all kinds of food products in our view. And also, as you well know, we have spent a lot of our time and efforts to try to make sure that folks know where their food comes from, what country it comes from, and by doing that, food consumers can make informed decisions about where it is that want to buy their food and what they have in their food. And I thought Senator Murman captured the philosophy of farmers union fairly well when he said, if people want to eat bugs, that's America, it's their business. And so that's kind of our view on these things, but it certainly ought to be labeled. And we're open to any kind of discussion, whether or not 5% is the right threshold or whatever it should be. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hanson. Questions?
No, sir.
None? Seeing none? Okay. Thank you.
And
for your
thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, thanks to Senator Murman for bringing the bill.
Are there additional proponents? I seeing none. Are there opponents to LB 1396? Seeing none. Neutral? Seeing none. Senator Murman, would you like to close?
Looks like it might be consent calendar. I think there could possibly, this might not totally be a preemptive bill. There could possibly be protein powders that are already sold that contain more than 5% bugs. Bug product. They call it bug product. I assume it's bug. I'm open to questions.
Okay. Questions for Senator Murman?
If not, thank
Seeing
you.
none, I thank you, Senator Murman. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Online comments for LB 1396, 4 proponents, 1 Jiminy Cricket opponent, and 0 neutral. So very good. Thank you. That concludes our agriculture committee.